Hey, what's going on, guys? Your host of the most, George McKay, in the building. And today I have a super special guest, a man who was gracious enough to meet me after he's been up 2 days, super tired. I appreciate him being here. Mr. Jan Murphy. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. A little bit tired. I was one of the Avengers Endgame late show people last night, followed by an early TV appearance this morning, so really just didn't really sleep much.
Super bag. Yeah, my daughter and I are going tomorrow, so no
Nice.
Spoilers.
No. You're gonna love it. It's everything. It's perfect.
Perfect. It's good to hear when you hear that a movie is perfect.
Absolutely perfect.
All right, so Jan, one of the first questions we always ask everybody is, where did your love from wrestling start?
For me, I was when we lived in a village called Camden East, which is sort of, I guess, northwest of Kingston. I grew up in, it's a little tiny village. My parents lived close to my mom's sister, and we were visiting there one day, and my uncle had this thing on the TV, and I saw this, and I was like, what is this? I sat down, I watched it, and I was just captivated by it, and it actually was WrestleMania 2. I would learn it, much later in my life. But that was kind of it. Had me right away. I went to school and I asked my buddies, if any of you guys seen this, and some of them had. And the next thing you know, we used to go into my buddy Rob Plumley's basement for all the pay-per-views, and his parents would get the pay-per-view, and there'd be 6 or 8 of us down there watching it, and we'd do it in the schoolyard, and I used to beat up my late brother with moves, and I just kind of, my parents used to take us grocery shopping. There was a mall with a grocery store where we used to go in Napanee, and they had a store there called the Met. And Mom would always give us some money so they could shop in peace. And now that I'm a parent, I totally know why. Shopping with kids is the worst kind of shopping, especially grocery shopping. So they would give us money, and we'd run down to the Met, and they at that time had the LJN figures, of which I still have almost the full collection. And I would sit there for forever trying to decide which one I wanted. And yeah, that for me, that was my earliest, my earliest wrestling memories, and just grew from there.
Do you have a favorite match? Like, it's hard to narrow down when you've been a fan as long as you and I have. But do you have a favorite match or a couple of favorite matches that really stand out to you?
Yeah, I just posted recently that I was watching my favorite match of all time with Bret the Hitman Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin with special guest referee Ken Shamrock. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that I like that match, but the story that it told was so good. The fact that it was a catalyst for the rise of the Attitude Era was a bonus. And now, Ken Shamrock's a good friend of mine, so it has a little bit more special meaning at this point in my life as well. But that one is my favorite match of all time. I liked Austin, Shawn Michaels, Mike Tyson. A lot of the stuff that went on in those days, I really enjoyed, but that Bret one stands out for me.
Yeah, I mean, the Attitude Era was just the glory days of wrestling, and it's not that we haven't had some special moments now. It's just that it's kind of lost in translation. The rosters are so big, and there's so much to focus on. Like, especially in the WWE world, you've got Raw, 3 hours, SmackDown, 2, maybe going to 3 from what I'm reading online, NXT UK, 205. It's hard to find the time really to focus on one thing. You've got to try to keep your hand in everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I remind myself often that I have a skewed view of wrestling because of my memories of that time in my life, right? I mean, that time in my life, I was a teenager. I was, hormone ravaged, adolescent, teen, crazy. That kind of stuff was right up my alley, right? I mean, I was just starting to work and start to be a man, and here I am watching this guy beat up his boss, and so it's really difficult. I remind myself sometimes to look around and see how the crowds are interacting today, especially the young people, and I think they look at it the same way as I did my kids do. I know that my daughters look at it with wide eyes and just stars in their eyes. I have to keep myself grounded and remind myself once in a while that it's not any better or worse today than it was when I grew up. I'm 42. I'm not 18 anymore. What I liked then, isn't what I like now.
So you mentioned that your daughter's falling in love with it very quickly. Do they have their favorites? Like, do you guys have debates about who you think is the best right now?
Uh, my oldest daughter's absolutely crazy about it right now. I mean, she loves Rhonda. She's so upset that Rhonda's gone on hiatus that she, refuses to even acknowledge it. She also she also loves AJ Styles right now. She's way into AJ Styles stuff. I mean, AJ's a terrific performer. I'm again just 10-year-old daughter. It's hard for me to put myself in her shoes, but I know she likes to watch AJ's matches. They don't like Samoa Joe. Uh,
Not a lot of people do these days.
you know, my youngest daughter really likes Braun Strowman because he picked her up at a house show we went to a few months ago and gave her a hug, and it's things like that, right? I mean, my kids get special privileges that other kids don't get because I'm so close with Natty and WWE in general. So I get to take my kids backstage and they get to meet, Ronda Rousey and all the women's and other stars. So it's a bit of I try to tell them all the time, you don't have the same view as other kids do. You get to do things that others don't get to do. And hopefully one day they realize that. But yeah, that's kind of, we watch matches and we see different things. I mean, women's matches, they love the women's matches. They'll watch every minute of every women's match. The men's matches, they'll watch them. It depends on who's in it and, how long the match goes and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. My 9-year-old daughter, she's obsessed with the women. She's all about Sasha Banks, Bailey. She, every pay-per-view, we don't let her stay up. So thankfully, the women's matches are not too late in the card, except for WrestleMania. She did get to stay up late. She was super tired the next day, but it was worth it. So in terms of, I guess, your relationship with WWE, you are very close. I was actually following you on Facebook when you were at WrestleMania. That was just wild. Some of the amazing things you got to see and do and interact. In terms of your relationship with them, you do a lot of like blogging and reviews on all the pay-per-views, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Work at in Kingston, which is a daily newspaper, the oldest here in Canada, actually. So I started writing about it when I got here because, again, like I said, I came here in 1998. I started here full time in 1999, which was the height of the Attitude Era. Stone Cold, The Rock, The Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, so on and so forth. So I convinced the editor here at the time that wrestling was big enough and mainstream enough that it deserved a presence in the paper. And after a short battle with the sports editor at the time, we did start publishing a regular weekly column on the WWE, basically. It started off with me, just my thoughts, my observations and thoughts and, news and views on what was happening on TV every week. And over the course of time, having a column in a daily newspaper in Canada was one of the few regular wrestling dedicated features in print at the time. So I finally started to get a little bit of attention from WWE, and at first I was requesting interviews and being denied. When I look back now, I can totally get it. At the time, it was kind of a bummer, but eventually they trusted me enough, and I developed a relationship when they had offices here in Canada to the point where they threw me the odd telephone interview here and there, and then I started going covering live events. Covered my first WrestleMania when it was in 18 was in Toronto. Covered the SummerSlam in 2003, I think, 4, somewhere in there. And I used to go up and cover all the house shows, and they would, start to give me more and more access to the talent. My column ran for about 5 years weekly, and when it stopped, I still kept writing wrestling features once in a while if they would be coming through town or something was offered to me through WWE. I just kept my contacts with them. And I guess it was around the time that Edge retired that I began to fully immerse myself back in wrestling feature writing again. Because by then I'd become an editor at the paper, and I had a little bit more time to do the side project, and the passion had returned again because I was enjoying, still enjoying watching wrestling, and I developed a love for writing by that point. So that's how I sort of began to cover it, and then 5 years ago, the opportunity to go cover WrestleMania was offered to me by the Toronto Sun editor when the regular people decided to take a pass. And I went down there with the intent of impressing WWE and making sure that before I left, everybody knew who I was. And that's what I did. And they've wanted me back every year since. And I have great friends who work in the media relations and international relations and PR and creative guerrilla position in the ring. It's been awesome. I love WWE. I love the people who work there, and I still love wrestling like I did when I was 6 and 7 years old.
It's pretty cool when you can carry that kind of passion forward for a long-standing period of your life. Myself, I've been a wrestling fan. My earliest memory was watching WrestleMania 6 on my uncle's TV. Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior for the title. It was just these larger-than-life characters. And the fact that you've passed that down to the family, much as I have, is pretty cool. I kind of feel a budding bromance here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a fun life.
For sure. So I think one of the things I wanted to talk to you most about was Chinlock and how all these exciting things you're doing are happening. You've got one great event that I know of coming up June 15th. You've got kind of a collection of legends, if you will, coming down to Kingston. I believe it's the Leon Center, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
It's on Tragically Hip Way or Boulevard.
Yep.
And you've got some amazing guys coming. Like you got Bret the Hitman Hart coming down. I believe Arn Anderson's coming down. I also think you've got some matches in the works with like Tommy Dreamer. These guys are making appearances. So how did this all kind of come to fruition? How did you put this all together?
Well, Chinlock itself, I've told the story before. I was approached by a friend of mine who just asked me to have coffee and wanted to pick my brain about having some kind of event happen around Christmas time that could raise some money for a charity or some help out a local charity. And I said, well, I'm a big proponent of pro wrestling. At the time, there hadn't been an independent wrestling promotion doing much in Kingston, so there was a promoter out of Cornwall who had been running a few shows in and around Kingston, so I just introduced them. That was my role in things, and that promoter said that he would like to, help them put together an event. And as far as I knew, everything was rolling together. That was probably in around like September of that year, 4 years ago, I guess. And I was down with Tommy Dreamer at House of Hardcore in New York. And I left his house to drive home, and my phone rang. And she was telling me that the promoter was pulling the pin on the show. And being the kind of person I am, I felt some responsibility for introducing them. So I told her to leave it with me. I made a call to my Chinlock business partner and best friend, Justin Cousineau, and said, look, I had an involvement in this show. I helped bring these people together. I feel a responsibility. Let's try and save this. So just during that drive home, he was able to put together a card and get us a ring, and I started calling in favors of people I'd done features on or helped, promote events for over the years. We brought down Ron Hutchison, who trained Edge and Christian and Trish, and number of others. And Spenny, who's a friend of mine through, again, wrestling. Life is wrestling. I always say that. And Jimmy Corderas, who I'd done a feature on. And we pulled that one out of the fire and raised a few $1,000s in the process. Enjoyed it so much, I said, let's do it again. And that's when we decided to introduce a legend, was in year 2. And we brought the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, up, and had a wonderful time with him. We raised about $8,000 in the second year. And then for the third year, we brought up Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And that was the turning point for us. Ricky was a huge draw. We had over 700 people show up. We raised like $11,000 for charity that year. And last year we did it at Queens. We had about 1,000 people come out. And the Ricky year, we raised over $20,000. And last year we raised about $40,000.
Wow.
Total with the show. And last year was when this event for this year had been sort of come into being put together. I had the idea. I managed to sort of run my vision by everyone who was part of the committee that we have here for the Chinlock stuff. And everybody was on board if we could get the venue, first of all, and find some kind of funding to offset the costs. So luckily I have friends in the city from my 20 years of working in the newspaper, and a lot of people stepped in and helped make this possible. The Leon's owner has dates in his contract with the naming rights that allow him to donate the venue for charitable purposes. So he has graciously donated the venue to us this year. So we have this 7,000-seat arena, which is costing us almost nothing. The Kinsman Club of Kingston stepped in with a huge financial commitment to this event. Canadian Tire, the same thing. I mean, the only reason this is happening is because of the generosity of people in the community. This show was in my head for a few years since I was at one of these types of events, and I've just been lucky. It's been a lot of good things falling into place to allow me to work with this group of people to bring the show to Kingston. So it's a wrestling legends convention during the day, and then a wrestling show teaming up with House of Hardcore in the evening.
Well, it must be so cool when you see like the vision that you have in your head coming full force and seeing all the passion of everyone else around you to make it happen. That's got to be a surreal feeling for you.
Yeah, it's pretty humbling. I mean, some days when I get pretty stressed out about this thing because it's just bigger than I ever could have imagined, and there's so many things all the time that need to be dealt with. But then I sit in a room sometimes with 3 or 4 or 5 other people who help me with this, and we all prop each other up. We all make sure that everyone's doing what they have to do, and that we're staying organized and we're staying on top. And everybody just believes that this event will succeed and it will raise a lot of money for charity, because these events are fully charitable. I don't take anything. Justin doesn't take anything out of this. All the money that's raised above what we spend to put the events on goes to youth diversion, and we always involve, a few other local charities as well. We have community this year, as well as our secondary. We've had the Kingston Military Family Resource Center. We've had Hands of Hope. We've had a lot of different local charities, and that's what I like. They all revolve around helping children and young people and troubled people. So that's really the motivation for us, and what we all work toward with this. The fact that I get to bring in my heroes, and I've said a lot of times I might be the face of Chinlock, but everyone else is the heart. I mean, I get to go out and be the guy who speaks on everyone else's behalf, and A lot of people think that I'm the owner, but a lot of people behind the scenes who make this happen. It just happens to be I'm the guy who does a lot of the talking.
Well, it's a great event, and it's an amazing. When I saw it online, I was like, you know what, I got to sit down with this individual because he's got so much passion for the business, but also all the other little things he's doing, and everyone that's pitching in. I think it's a great cause, and I want to applaud you and everybody else involved in it because I think it's one hell of a thing you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. It's very rewarding, and it might be a lot of work, and some days it might have me second guessing myself or wondering if I've bitten off more than I can chew. But it's so fun, and it's so I've learned so much. I know so much about running a major event now, not only a wrestling event, a major event in general. I mean, there is so much that goes on behind the scenes that you never could imagine you'd have to deal with, that you deal with. uh, the little things like not forgetting to get lanyards for volunteers, and you're dealing with insurance, and you're dealing with having to make sure you have security, and you have to have volunteers in certain numbers, and you have to make sure everybody's working shifts, and then there's putting together the convention part. Ticketing is a real pain in the butt, I have to tell you that. Um, down to making sure that the food is right, and you want to make sure what you offer that you can deliver, and that's always been a thing for me with this show. Right from day one, tickets to our events have always been $10. They're still $10, though I don't have control over the fees on top of tickets this year. It is what it is, right? Goes through Ticketmaster. Those fees are non-negotiable. The city has fees because it's a city-owned and run venue, but bottom line, of the money that you pay for those tickets, that $10 for those general admission tickets goes to charity. Our seats are $25. VIP packages are $150 or $200. You get to meet every one of our legends. You get one autograph and one picture with each. For $200, it's unheard of. I mean, I look at Comic-Con prices, and I mean, Ring of Honor's coming to Toronto, and they're charging more than I'm charging to meet Arn and Tully. So, we built this around goodwill, generosity, and being attainable for everyone. I want people to be able to bring their girlfriend, their husband, their wife, their kids, their neighbors, and come out and have a good time. The hardcores will get the VIPs. We know that. I don't know of anywhere else for $200 you can meet Bret Hart, Arn and Tully, Tommy Dreamer, Billy Gunn, Hornswoggle, Mark Henry, Jimmy Corderas, Jimmy Hart, everyone for $200. You get an autograph. You can bring your own stuff. We don't have any rules against belts and premium pricing and all that other nonsense that you see at a lot of these places. It's good, $60 just to, Brett will sign anything for you. That's always been what we've done. We had Ricky Steamboat here, Vicky Guerrero, TJ Wilson, and he made a $20 donation charity. You got to go in and meet them and get an autograph. That's what it's about, right? Connecting with the community.
That's incredible. And are a lot of the tickets still on sale? Like, do you still have a lot of the VIP packages available?
Yeah,
and all that stuff, and everything's available on Ticketmaster, right?
Yeah, or if you live here in Kingston or near Kingston, you can come and buy it in person and save yourself those fees. But yes, we have about 65 VIP level 1 tickets left. I'm not sure of the number on Headliner. I won't get my next update until next week. And I'm not sure on the VIP level 2. I think probably about 50 level 2. And then we still have, I'm not worried about the Bret Headliner package yet, but you can pay for $15 in any of the other legends. You need the Headliner ticket for Bret. Everyone else, Arn, Tully, Dreamer, Mark Henry, Billy Gunn, Hornswoggle, Jimmy Hart, Jimmy Corderas, Tugboat, they're all $15 each. If you want to just pick and pay. $15, or you can buy 3 for 15 and get a ticket to the wrestling show at night. The VIP packages come with a ticket to the evening wrestling show as well. Front row or a second row seat with the VIP level 1, and you get a general admission ticket with VIP level 2.
Wow, that's the deals are crazy. So anybody that's going to be listening to this when it drops, I'm sure there's still going to be tickets available. So make sure you guys run out and get it, support it. It's a great cause. One other thing I did want to talk to you about, if you're okay for time, which we are. We're only about 25 minutes now. The state of wrestling as it is right now, there's so much out there, as we talked about earlier, not just in the WWE umbrella, but everywhere. You got Ring of Honor, you got Impact, it's kind of redefining itself, and you got AEW kind of creeping in. We'll see what they're about as May 25th gets closer. But looking at the state of wrestling now, do you feel that it's more of an exciting time than the Attitude Era? Mind the storylines, but everything that's kind of percolating, it's almost wrestling is very, very pop culture and relevant again. I mean, it did lose a step here and there, but right now, it's so hot.
I mean, the way I always explain it to people is I say, look at WWE as an example. WWE, was in a war with WCW, and we've heard all the stories about how they were almost out of money and the Mike Tyson gamble and things like this. But back then, wrestling companies, as good as wrestling was, wrestling companies were fighting for their survival. They needed TV deals. They needed to be on networks, and we still see it. Network deals are great. TV deals are still great. TV is still a very relevant medium to be, especially for wrestling. But they were fighting for their survival. The WWE now is a multi-billion-dollar worldwide company. What our little bubble of what we see here in North America and how we pick it apart sometimes has me scratching my head, because if you watch, some of the other shows that they do overseas, even the Saudi Arabia show, for all the controversy that comes with, if you look at the fans and you see the large number to watch this, they're just starting to tap into these markets. India, China, Japan. I mean, no other wrestling companies are in these markets, and WWE is now in there, and it's incredible. It's just what WWE does, and just how monstrous that company is on a global scale is almost impossible to get your head around, and it's actually opened the door for all these other companies to exist. In the 90s, WWE would have shut down AEW before they even thought about getting off the ground. They would have shut down Ring of Honor. They would have shut down Impact. They would have shut down, Billy Corgan's company, the NWA. It's happening now because there's room out there, because WWE has laid the groundwork and did the legwork to make wrestling a mainstream, everyday part of our lives. There's not a single soul that I've ever encountered who I've said, I read a wrestling column, or I go cover wrestling, things like that, who hasn't said to me, I used to watch wrestling. Every human being on this, in this part of the world has heard of wrestling, has watched wrestling, and at one point probably consider themselves a fan. So it's all built to where we are today, which is incredible. I love NXT. I enjoy. I'm excited for AEW because it looks like it's going to offer something very different. And different is good. If different makes everybody else work harder to be better, then that's good. WWE is huge. They don't have to work as hard for, to make money as everybody else does. If you don't make money, you don't survive. So yeah, I mean, it's so healthy right now, And yeah, you hear Triple H with his pissant remark, and they're bothered by AEW, and it looks like some talent may, in fact, Sasha Banks, Dean Ambrose, some of the talent that are leaving WWE or wanting to leave WWE could turn up at AEW. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the fan. It's a good thing for the business. And I mean, I look just here in Ontario, the fact that there is a wrestling company in so many smaller markets now that didn't have one. Cornwall's back stronger than it's probably ever been with Seaway Valley. Smash in Toronto. Toronto has what, 5 or 6 wrestling companies just in Toronto alone now. All seem to do very well. Smash, there's a whole bunch. Smash is spread into neighboring markets. There's a couple of wrestling companies in Hamilton. Quebec is strong again. The East Coast is strong again. It's terrific, and there's somewhere for everyone to work now. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Do you feel like, because there's all the keyboard warriors out there that are constantly conspiracy theorying online, do you see another possible Monday Night War happening with AEW announcing the TV deal going on Tuesdays around the same time as SmackDown? Do you see something kind of possibly budding there, in your opinion?
I don't, because, and I've said this many times, until AEW is a publicly traded company that has whole shows in markets around the world the way that WWE does, is a billion-dollar company based on its revenue and not based on its owner being a billionaire, there is no competition. WWE moving to Friday nights with a new TV deal with Fox, I mean, that's huge. Raw is Raw. Everyone always watches Raw. The internet people can complain all they want about the creative and about the fact that it's a 3-hour Raw, but the truth of the matter is WWE has no competitor, and it won't have a competitor for a long time. AEW is no different than Impact or Ring of Honor. It's a small startup company that has a little bit more access to money, and even with a good TV deal, that doesn't guarantee anything. Impact had a great TV deal at one time on Spike, and look where it is today. That said, I like what I'm hearing so far. I like Cody. Cody's got a good head on his shoulders. So do the Bucks. They're all very well liked and respected. I just think sometimes fans feel so passionately about either the company they love or the company they hate that they kind of lose sight of reality. And the reality is, the WWE is a multi-billion-dollar worldwide company. It has no competitor on that level, and it would take AEW 20, 30 years to get to that level. That said, I think any competition is healthy, and if the content is good, then that's a win for everyone. The example I give is, we're Canadian, we live in Canada, and I'm not going to say I don't know who some of the AEW talent are, because I do, only because I do this for a living. But I can tell you, probably 950 out of 951 Canadians will have no idea who Kenny Omega is. And, that's just reality. But 999 out of 1,000 probably have heard of Chris Jericho. They've definitely heard of John Cena. That's the difference for me. Kenny Omega is a great talent, but honest to God, hardly anyone knows who he is. And those are the things that AEW is facing. They've got to do it the right way, do it slowly, keep being different. Because I hear Natty say this all the time. Her dad told her, always be different. And that's what makes you successful in wrestling. Look at all the successful, major stars who could always reinvent themselves. Think about Triple H. He's reinvented himself time and again. Undertaker reinvents himself. Stone Cold Steve Austin reinvented him. Hulk Hogan is a great example of somebody who could always reinvent himself. And that WWE has always reinvented itself as a company. We started with the cartoon-like characters in the 80s when it took off and became mainstream. Then we moved into an edgier time, the Attitude Era, because those kids who were watching it when they were 8 or 9 were like you and me, right? They were 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and Tugboat wasn't as appealing, as Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then they reinvented themselves again, and now they've reinvented themselves again. And I think that's what AEW has to do. They have to, stay fresh, stay relevant, and stay creative. Say what you want about storylines and things not, creative not being great, but WWE knows how to market itself better than anyone.
That is true. And one of the best things that surprised me the most about this year's WrestleMania was when I looked at the match card when it first all kind of came out, I was a little bit on the fence. I was like, it's not a great card, but it's not a bad card. But then they did this amazing thing where they surprised the crap out of me on almost every turn. The Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar match happening right at the tail start of everything. The Revival losing their titles. I'm a big Revival guy. Then you had Kofi. You had John Cena return as the Doctor of Thugonomics. It was just, this year's WrestleMania was such a breath of fresh air. It was incredible. If you had to pick a moment being there, what would you say was your favorite moment of this year's WrestleMania? If you could pick one, narrow one down.
The show itself?
Yeah.
Or the entire week?
Let's just go with the show itself, because I know you were there the whole week.
The show itself, history was made, right? There were lots of cool things that happened throughout the night, but that main event, Ronda Rousey being who she is, the crossover appeal that she brought to WWE with her, the enthusiasm, the ties to Rowdy Piper. She just grabbed and the ball and ran with it, and she captured the imaginations of people, and she made all the girls better because she brought that legitimacy. We like legitimacy in wrestling because so many times in our existences and in our lives as wrestling fans, we have to put up with people telling us that it's not real. And when someone like Ronda Rousey comes into the world, again, I'm pretty glad I was there to witness that. Even though the finish didn't go as well as I think they all had wanted.
You're talking about the main event and that everything was how great it was. The finish was subpar. But if there was another bright spot that could come out to you, for me, it was Kofi Kingston. Seeing him win was just incredible. That was a huge, I loved everything they did. I loved the build of the story. I loved the twists and the turns they did. That was a huge one for me. And seeing an 11-year workhorse finally get his due, that was incredible. Would you agree with me on that, or was there something else that stands out to you?
No, that was tremendous. It had reminded me so much of Daniel Bryan's rise, several years ago when, they were bucking conventional thinking and, traditional, tradition. Vince McMahon, loves big, burly Brock Lesnar type wrestlers, Drew McIntyre, and, Daniel Bryan broke through, and the Kofi was just magic this year, watching how that all came to be. He was a fill-in, due to an injury to Mustafa Ali, and here we are weeks later, and he's in there with Daniel Bryan, which I thought was just perfect. Been hearing lots about Daniel Bryan having re-injured his head and neck because we haven't seen him since. So for those two to be in the ring together making, and that was the part that I think was lost in the Kofi stuff, was how good Daniel Bryan was. in all of that, because, as you know, you're only good and you only succeed in wrestling if your opponent makes it work too. And I thought that Kofi was amazing, but working with Daniel Bryan made him even more amazing, because Daniel Bryan, to me, is an elite talent in wrestling, and he possesses skills that other people do not. Daniel Bryan is, right at the top of the most talented wrestlers alive today. So for me, it was a great pairing. It was magic, and it was the perfect ending at WrestleMania. And that could have been the main event just as easily as the women were, and sent the crowd home just as happy.
Awesome. Well, Jan, thank you very much for taking the time out. I know you're super bagged. I appreciate you taking the time out. And if you ever want to do it again, you are more than welcome. You are now officially a member of the Straight Talk Wrestling family. We'd love to have you on anytime you're available. Anytime you want to call me up and say, George, let's just shoot the shit again, I would absolutely love that.
Ditto. Anytime you wanna chat, or you want some thoughts on something, or yeah, for sure. And we'll hope to see you down here for June the 15th, and we have a fun night and do some good for the community at the same time.
Absolutely. I am working on getting stuff together to go down there, so I will definitely try my hardest to get out there, because I do want to definitely get something signed by Bret the Hitman Hart. I mean, I had his glasses as a kid. I kind of became a Shawn Michaels fan later on, but I don't want to tell him that. I'm not going to tell him that. I'm going to say I was always a Hitman fan. All right, Jen, thank you so much, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
All right, thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye. All right, guys, so that was Jan Murphy. Man, that was a great interview, great time. I'm glad that I was able to talk to him and pick his brain on so many things, and pick up that amazing event he's got happening June 15th in Kingston. Tickets are still available. They're on Ticketmaster, so don't hesitate to go down there. It's going to be super epic, super amazing. And I know for a fact there's a lot of Straight Talk followers that are already booked and going down there. And I myself will make that promise. I'm going to go down there for that day and check everything out as best I can, as long as nothing conflicts with personal life, family life, work life, all that kind of stuff. As always, I'm your host, George Mackay. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, we'll have another great episode, so stay tuned, stay faithful, and stay always Straight Talk. Thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. Catch us every Wednesday at 7:30 on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Google Play Music. Also, be sure to follow us on our social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram at Straight Talk Wrestling, and Twitter at _Straight Talk. Wrestling!